Hi everyone, welcome back to the Yapping with YUCCA podcast. My name is Zoe, and today we're going to be sitting down with members of our YUCCA staff and steering committee to discuss We Got Us, which is a new campaign that we launched in January. And we launched this a few days before the opening day of the 2026 legislative session, with a multi-day boot camp as well as a weekend of, training and solidarity and collective action that culminated with a mass mobilization at the state capitol on the opening day of the 2026 legislative session. And so we wanted to get started today by just having everyone introduce themselves, y'all's role with YUCCA, and then maybe a little bit about what role you played in organizing for We Got Us and for the mass mobilization. Yeah.
Well, I can start. I'm Victoria. I'm YUCCA's organizing program coordinator. With We Got Us, I was really leading a lot of the different creative resistance pieces, as well as doing a lot of the different background logistics in order to make sure that folks were able to get lodging that they needed, that they were able to get transportation up, and different things like that.
My name is Zan. I am a fellow as well as a steering committee member for YUCCA. And as far as my role for organizing with YUCCA, I kind of got thrusted into my position here, at the very start. And I was kind of just helping wherever I can, and also especially with volunteers and helping with volunteer coordination and making sure that they were set up and ready, and it was just a really amazing event.
I'm Johnny. I am a campaign organizer with YUCCA, and in terms of We Got Us, I think the role that I ultimately ended up playing was one kind of an MC kind of host throughout the program, so helping to ground the space and do our openings and our closings, along with help from a lot of others, but then also in terms of the day that Zoe mentioned that was full of trainings, really holding the relationships and pulling in all of the different trainers that joined us throughout the weekend. And yeah.
My name is Rafe, and I am a steering committee member. And in terms of We Got Us and with the organizing role, kind of helped wherever I could. And really with the trainings and stuff, I helped helping people getting to their trainings and kind of just floating around, helping where I could, helping with some comm stuff, and yeah.
Cool. Well, I think one of the first things I wanted us to kind of chat through for folks that maybe hadn't gotten the chance to hear as much about We Got Us yet is kind of why did we feel like this was the moment, right, where it made sense to bring people together at this scale? Johnny, you were just talking about including all of these different partners from across movements, right? And kind of what were we responding to when we first came up with this concept? Why did we feel like it was needed at this time?
Yeah, so, the organizing for We Got Us really picked up at the end of last year. And I think that it was really what we were called to. It was the response that, I think we felt called to provide to the first year of the second Trump administration. I think that, we've seen just such a mass escalation of all of the different crises that we're already facing, from, the climate crisis to, housing and the economy, to, all of these compounding issues. And so I think that We Got Us was really, also a response to the kind of, I think I would even go as far as to call it, the controlled opposition kind of thing, where I think we think of a lot of some of the more neoliberal responses to some of the actions of the Trump administration. We've seen a lot of, protests that haven't really been clear, what their demands or, the strategy that they were trying to use. And so I think, we wanted to be extremely intentional about bringing people into organizing spaces and being able to train them up to understand, what goes into movement building, and then actually practice that together, and then actually do it in the streets as well.
No, I think it's really interesting because I was doing a lot of different travel whenever folks came up with the We Got Us idea. And it was really interesting because before that, we were having a lot of different conversations about how we can really build this collective power and the different like trainings we could provide, what we have the resources to do, what we would need to outsource. And I was doing a bunch of different creative resistance trainings at this point, and we were also sitting there like, okay, how can we make sure that we're able to spread the resources and skills that we're able to get to our communities? And so it was really cool coming back from all of this travel and getting to have that meeting with the team and them being like, okay, so there's this idea. It's gonna take a lot of work, and we have about 3 months to do it. And I said, okay, let's do it, because we saw how important this was for our community to be able to do, and we saw what it would be able to build, and it was so beautiful to be able to actually see it come into fruition.
Yeah, I definitely, I remember just like what you're describing, this kind of moment where we're like, okay, we have this idea. Are we actually going to like try to pull this off? Because it wasn't even 3 months. It was like a month and a half. And so the turnaround time was just so extremely tight. And I'm really proud that we were able to kind of like, for lack of a better term, like lock in and, knock out, all of the outreach and the organizing and be able to like secure venues and lodging and all of those logistics that went into the weekend. It was, just really cool to see how fast that came together.
Yeah, I was just thinking back to like even before Tori, like you got back from your trip. I just remember we were all sitting around this table trying to brainstorm like new campaigns and new trainings and stuff for the coming year. And I remember we started with the idea of doing like expanding our existing like monthly training series that we had been doing, and it just kind of snowballed into this like bigger and bigger undertaking basically. So it was so exciting in January when we actually were able to like pull things off and bring folks together and kind of see this vision that had started very small and like grew very, very rapidly actually like come to life and come into fruition. It was really cool. Yeah.
And also, we did that with having like 3 weeks of a break in between. Like when we say we locked in, we were not playing.
Yeah.
I feel like one of the pieces that like really helped us be able to do that too was some of the partners and like other folks that we were able to pull in with us. I'm thinking especially with the training boot camp, like all of the folks that helped us lead different workshops and stuff like that. Does anyone, like I know Tori, you were doing more of like the creative resistance. I know we did like a big direct action 101 training that folks were leading. Like, does anyone want to talk any more about like what that looked like and kind of what those partnerships looked like too, in terms of, organizing capacity for boot camp?
Yeah, I can kind of jump in. I think that it was really cool for me because there was a lot of like full circle moments where I think I was really able to pull in people who have, been mentors to me and people who have trained me up in different, tactics and different strategies. And to be able to then like tap them into this space where they can then like share that with even more people, I think was like really cool. So, I think of, for example, we had Emma and Bella come up to do our policy advocacy training. And those are two people who I've known for over 10 years now and been organizing along with. And really like Emma was like my entry point into like community work. And so to be able to like continue like working with her in this capacity and seeing like creating that moment that I had at like 12 years old in like my first training with Emma, learning about, these systems and like ways that we can fight back, like being able to create those moments then once again and I think it was so cool to see the diversity of all of our participants, like from young people all the way to, some of our participants who were in their like late 70s or even I think we had a couple of like 80-year-olds, which is just really powerful to see that like intergenerational collaboration. But yeah, just and similar circumstances around the other trainers where I was able to, think back to people that have just had a really big impact on my development and then tap them in to continue that political education. And yeah, I think that I've also been, I think it is kind of actually cool that we are recording this, a month out, because, I've also been having debrief conversations with a lot of these trainers, and they're just absolutely like blown away and so grateful for the space that we held. And so far, every one of them like wants to do it again and wants to be a part of this long term. And like, I was speaking with, for example, Dr. Montoya, who is doing our street medicine workshop. I spoke to him last week, and, he's even now, we have him thinking about like, he wants to build out like, a repertoire of like workshops that he can offer that, go, beyond just like what we were able to cover in those like 3 hours, and really like build out more capacity. And just, yeah, moments like that where I'm like, okay, this has a lot of potential to go a lot of different directions, and really like ripple out throughout, our state and other communities, in terms of being able to like share these resources.
No, definitely. I really would want to continue going on what you were saying about the ripple of what we can do in different communities, and connecting with folks as well, because for me, I'm gonna keep going back to this travel piece. I was able to do all of this different travel, and through that I was able to connect with a lot of different organizers across the country, who then were able to connect us with people who not only were able to go to our training of trainers a few months back, but then they were also able to come and support us here during the We Got Us. And so being able to not only build community within our own state, but also being able to continue building those connections nationally, and building that narrative, and recognizing how connected all of these things are, and how it's the same exploitative, extractive tactics that they're using, just in different places, in different ways, and seeing how we can build a diversity of tactics, how we can support one another regardless of where we are, regardless of states, regardless of any borders that shouldn't even exist. So I think that that was a very cool moment to be able to see everybody come together. And then with that, I was able to train under David Solnit. And so David Solnit has also been able to train with Joe, who was able to help me lead the creative resistance piece. And with that, we were doing a lot of screen printing, and so we were able to get a bunch of different bandanas and make a bunch of posters, teach folks how to not only make their own stencils and create their own designs on these bandanas with the screen printing, but we also had a bunch of designs already made, we had banners already made, and we had so many different stations, and I definitely would not have been able to manage all of that on my own. And having Joe to be able to be there and really take hold of the screen printing process was such a help. And it really shows how much, if you actually talk to your community and network and realize that people have skills that they can share, and they're more than happy to share, and they're more than happy to teach folks and expand this to everybody. That's always a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah, I really want to double down on especially the beauty of the connection at We Got Us, because I feel kind of also speaking to what Johnny was talking about, I think the intergenerational connection at not only just during the boot camp, but also at the actual at the mobilization, just seeing so many different ages of folks working together, being in community with each other, and really learning from each other was, I think, really beautiful. And it's there's so much, I think, vulnerability it takes also from elders to come into this space and say, hey, we want to learn from you, and we want we are fully committed to taking in lessons from you guys and supporting you. And I think it's super beautiful. And then it's also, and then there's on the flip side, there's all these youth coming, and they're wanting to learn and asking questions and really trying to get involved and really trying to like see what this is about. And yeah, I think it was like, I think that connection between like people of different generations is really beautiful.
I also really appreciated like the geographical diversity, like not only like from our state, you know, we had folks come up from Las Cruces, people come from the Four Corners area, people, you know, obviously we were in Santa Fe, and people from Albuquerque, but even beyond that, to see like, you know, we had one participant who drove all the way from the Bay to join us for the weekend. And I think that that is like so powerful. We also had Bobby join us from New York City, and as well as, you know, a couple of folks from, you know, the borderlands south of us and Corpus Christi in, you know, the Gulf South. And so to see really like every coast represented, every coastline and all directions kind of represented here in the space, I think was also really beautiful.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was thinking about too, just in terms of like the different groups of folks we were able to bring together. It was so cool to me seeing, like, I don't know, I think part of our inspiration for this was a lot of the YUCCA crew had gone to New York City for New York Climate Week back in September. And one of the things we talked about when we did a podcast episode debriefing that trip actually was about how one of the most valuable pieces of that trip was the connections that we were able to build with folks from across regions. And so it was so cool to see like new allies and like relationships we had built in like New York City with folks from the Gulf South coming into the space, combined with folks that had like mentored some of us for years, combined with folks that were just getting into movement work for the first time. It was really cool to see everyone come together. I think there was like one moment where I was doing a lot of comms work during this. So I was doing like photos and videos of things. And there was one day we were holding like this multi-hour direct action 101 training, which was similar to something we had done in the summer with a smaller group. And just seeing like these 150 plus people together in one room doing these like activities and exercises that over the summer was great and super powerful to have 20 people doing, but just seeing like the difference in what is possible when we're also bringing all these folks together and the way that that's building capacity for then, yeah, these folks from like across different regions to take these skills and this knowledge back into their communities and continue to organize and educate other folks with it. I don't know. It was really cool to see. Yeah.
No, definitely. That also makes me think of the video that you were able to post where they were talking about the squeeze your hand, right? And I think that that was such a beautiful way to not only build true connections and build trust with one another, but it was also a beautiful way to show how similar we are and how all of us at the same time are living different realities. And I think that that was such a beautiful thing, because when we're supposed to take care of each other in the streets, how are we supposed to do that if we don't trust one another and if we aren't taking the time to listen to someone's story? And so I think that so many pieces, every single piece of this, was so beautifully and intentionally done. And I love the like bonds that I was literally like seeing being made. I was talking to people throughout there and they were like, oh my God, like I've always wanted to be around this many people that are this like-minded. And it's just beautiful that we were able to hold a space like that.
Yeah, also to like add to that, I think one of the things about like really being able to hold the space, and I think that was really beautiful and consistent, was like also the food. I really would like to shout out because there was so much food, and I think that it like there was so much also like time for people to eat together, and I think that was really important, and I think that's like one of the most like important parts of holding spaces for people to create connections and network together, is like making sure that people can eat together and like actually like I feel like, you know, breaking bread with people is just like, that's like the best way to get to know somebody. And there was just like so much good food, so much we had like all the potlucks were just fantastic, such a like wide array of food. And like it was really nice to just see everybody like line up and then just like eating and talking together after every night. After it was like a really hard day, everybody was like doing stuff, tired after like 9-10 hours. And then it's like, oh, we're all eating together now, and it's like this is our time to decompress. Yeah, I just wanted to shout out that.
No, right? And then we were also able to get like a lot of people lodging in the same place. And so I was like randomly popping my head in, just making sure everyone was okay. And it was so nice seeing that like everybody was in the rooms, like actually hanging out with each other, like actually strategizing with one another and figuring out how they could build with one another, even outside of the space. And so it was really, yeah, just continuing to echo how gorgeous of a container we were able to build for folks, like from 7 in the morning until 9 p.m.
No, what you were saying, Zan, was making me think that I feel like, I don't know, for me at least, I feel like one of the big takeaways I was wanting folks to like walk away from boot camp and the mass mobilization with was, right, like, yes, we are training y'all up and like helping y'all build the skills and capacity to fight back against all of these threats that we're seeing. But at the same time, also, we know that our communities already not only hold the solutions, but have also been coming together to love each other and protect each other and care for each other in these ways for like generations, right? Regardless of the threats that we're facing. And I think a lot of the things y'all were mentioning around like the potlucks. So we had community members that weren't even necessarily participating in boot camp sign up and bring just like an enormous amount of food for folks every single day. We had local mutual aid groups that were doing like breakfast burritos for everyone in the mornings. There were some really amazing, incredible folks up in Santa Fe that a lot of the YUCCA staff were staying with while we were up there, who were just like so generous with their time and care. And I just think it was, yeah, all of these ways we were trying to like model for folks throughout the entire weekend what community care can look like in action, right? And these different ways that even if folks aren't jumping in the streets, what does it look like to come together to like show up for each other in every single way?
I think for me at least, and I think I have actually like seen this like resonate in like wider community spaces, but I think really just like knowing that like this is the path forward, that like, you know, the response that, you know, we saw, you know, it's a testament as to like how many people showed up, how many people came out, you know, the fact that we had over 150 people just for the weekend. I think we were never expecting to like have so many people join us. And the fact that, you know, we were able to come together across, you know, generations and across movement spaces. You know, we were bringing together not just climate groups, you know, like ourselves, but, you know, working with workers' rights organizations and, you know, organizations that do, you know, immigration justice and, you know, access to food and all of these different issues coming together and like really making an intentional like acknowledgement that like we are up against the same fight. And like knowing that, you know, the movement to find collective liberation is something that will require all of us. And I think that, you know, that's something that we've seen, especially recently, like with the political climate that we've been like having to actually like reach out to groups that we haven't always, you know, collaborated with or felt totally in alignment with, but actually like reaching out to them and like having conversations and like actually being able to like find common ground, I think has been really, really powerful. I think the fact that we were able to bring, you know, over 24 organizations together on, you know, this specific campaign is just such, you know, a victory for us personally, but also just so powerful. I can't think of a time in recent years where so many of these groups were like working together across these spaces in one space towards, you know, a common goal. And I think just with what, you know, we've been seeing in terms of, like I mentioned earlier, these, you know, kind of cascading effects of, you know, racial capitalism as it, in my opinion, is like dying and losing, you know, its control and power. just seeing, how people are coming together to respond in these times, I think is extremely powerful.
No, definitely. I know that for me, I'm always talking about how everybody has a role in the movement, and in general, we aren't the ones that get to choose that role, right? It's your choice where you fit into movement work, right? But it's also up to you to find out where you fit, right? And so we recognize also that that is a hard process for folks. And so one thing that I really appreciate about how we built out the trainings was that people had the ability to hop into these different trainings, right? So they had like a base of what direct action was, and then from there they were able to probably get a basic idea of like, okay, these are some of the things that intrigue me a little bit more. These are the things that I feel like could be good at. And then letting them test it out, getting trained, see if this is something they like, right? And we know that some of these people were then able to hop into different roles and feel like they actually did have the skills to be able to do this and the confidence to do it.
So yeah, and then I also wanted to add, and like just going back to Johnny's point about, like identifying kind of the situation at hand, and it kind of was just making me think about a quote from Huey P. Newton, whose birthday was yesterday, which is that power is the ability to define phenomena and make it act to our desire. And, we really recognize that this is a point where people are building class consciousness. They're building to a point where people are really ready to get activated and organized together. And I think it's really important. And like, I felt so like happy and blessed to be a part of creating this space and having people like, want to build community and want to build network and like want to get to this point in organizing. And like, yeah, I'm just so grateful.
I think my key takeaways are just like the community that was built from all of this. I think it was really beautiful to see it all come together, especially after like seeing like all of the work that went into it from just everybody. I just have a lot of love and admiration for everybody. Tori's point, I think specifically I kind of wanted to touch on just a little bit, just on like people finding their confidence and like finding their place in the movement. I think that's like incredibly important because I think it takes everybody a little bit to find that. And then to Johnny's point of like how this came together, how it was meant to. Yeah, just wanted to echo that.
Yeah, well, I can say for me, I actually I also work at a middle school, and I brought up some of my students as well as a few teachers up to come to the Roundhouse for the mobilization. And we got there early, and I just remember at like, what was it, like probably like 10:45-ish. It was just like people just started spawning. It was it felt like they're like when we first got there, it was like, oh, like I remember like the students were just like, oh, this is gonna be like whatever. And there was, yeah, it was just like it was just kind of like setting off. It was just like a bunch of old people, as usual, which is no problem. And but they weren't like expecting anything. And then we went. They were like thirsty and they wanted to get like boba because they're middle schoolers. So we got boba and we came back out and there's just droves of people spawning. And then like we were in the line and then it was just like people were handing us signs and like different things, and like there was just like cool ones all over the place. And I remember it was like we were there for a good amount of time, just kind of in the plaza, because I know there was some background stuff there was some issues with, but and then we just started moving, and it was like there was no end in sight, and there was like we were at the beginning, so we could see the beginning, but we couldn't see the end. And it was just like long, and it was like, and like we ended up going a lot farther than I think we initially thought as well, and it ended up like wrapping around the Roundhouse, and just hearing like everybody's voice just being so loud. And then we got up to the Capitol, to the actual building, everybody just like entered like a second gear and just like our voices are back. we did not lose them. And we're just like extra loud again. And I think like the energy of just having so much, youth as well as elders, as well as, people who are middle-aged, like just every age, every demographic. There were like kids who seemed like they had just like left school and just like popped over and they wanted to like have their voice heard too. And then, no, yeah, it was beautiful.
It was really crazy to me to see the difference between like that crowd and some of the other mobilizations I think we had been to as participants recently. Because I remember this one moment where Johnny, you were like on the megaphone trying to lead folks through chants as we were coming up to the roundhouse. And we had all of these like students and young people and youth at the front with this big "We Got Us" banner. And I remember at one point you said to them like, I can't hear you. Like, you have to be louder. And instead of chanting, they just all started screaming. And
That's funny.
I have never witnessed that happen before. And it was really, really cool.
It was I think for me, I can't like talk about the mass mobilization without kind of just zooming out 12 hours to kind of paint the full picture of like what went into this, because, we started that Monday finishing up our youth summit at the Roundhouse, where we kind of did a condensed version of the weekend, a little bit of an abbreviated version of some of the trainings around direct action and policy and disruption. And then, we finished the evening at our offices doing action prep. We were doing a lot of like the remaining stuff for the art build, and having dinner. And then, we kind of after dinner, we're, kind of circling up in our team and going over everything. And it's a little bit of like organized chaos. Like there's like so many moving pieces. And we were just trying to make sure, that we had, all of our, our program printed and like speeches printed, and everybody knew like where to be at what time, and everybody knew like how our team was splitting, our capacity, and just everything that night before. And then because Rafe and I have a lot of animals at home and weren't able to find someone to like watch our house for the entire like duration of the boot camp and the weekend, we were in transit actually between Albuquerque and Santa Fe every morning and every night. And so, we got back, I think we left Santa Fe after midnight on that Tuesday, and then had to be back in Santa Fe at like 8 a.m. And so, we went back, we like ate, we like passed out, woke up early, got back to Santa Fe. I think we were running a little bit behind, but, it was kind of whatever. We end up, meeting first at New Energy Economy to kind of like, orient ourselves, get everything that we need. And then we headed over to the plaza to start staging. And yeah, I think that, to see it go from, just our safety teams, which was, maybe like 40, 50 people when we first got there, slowly trickling, like you mentioned, to then just like this mass of people, was really crazy to see the plaza fill up like that. And then to, have, I think, the intentionality, of, the drummers leading us, I think was such a powerful experience. I know one, for Zephyr being vehicle support, and for that to like take place, in their vehicle, like in the back of their truck, I think, they particularly enjoyed, and it was just a really powerful experience. But then for all of us, I think it was the perfect way to like ground that space. And yeah, I mean, seeing the drone footage of like the aerial shots of that, marching down Old Santa Fe Trail was just completely, it was just like mind blowing to see so many people. And yeah, I mean, it was so powerful then, to transition to, our march, transition to our rally, with so many different speakers. I think it was a little too long. That's my only reflection. It's hard because, when I think back, there is not a single person who I would have cut, or I would have like asked to, like, I wouldn't have done anything different, and I would still end up with like a 3-hour program. But, I think that just the power and the perspective and the storytelling that each individual speaker was able to bring, from so many different, cultures and communities, I just think was so powerful to have so many people speaking, the truth that the world that, we envision for ourselves, and the world that, we are working towards, is something that we are actively building. And to see, especially people who were able to spend the entire weekend with us, and then, also, maybe speak or share art in the space, I think was really powerful. Like to have Bobby Sanchez from New York, who, we kind of flew out as our headline artist. I was really kind of pleasantly surprised when, she said that she wanted to join for the full weekend and not just, kind of come in to perform. And I just think that, that speaks just a testament to, her values and her ethics going through, movement spaces like this. But to, I think, see people then who have like spent the whole weekend with her, then get to like watch her perform, I think was really cool too. And just to see really all of the relationships that people had cultivated over the weekend and through the trainings, then put, it to the test in the streets, and see people, showing up for each other, keeping each other safe, stepping into roles that, 5 days prior, maybe they wouldn't have seen themselves stepping into, I think was just so powerful. And yeah.
I think for me, I was doing the mutual aid fair, and so I wasn't able to attend the mass mobilization piece itself. One thing that was so cool to hear, though, is about 30 minutes before y'all ever made it to the roundhouse, we heard you. Like, it was echoing throughout all of Santa Fe, and I didn't even know how many people were there yet. I had no clue. I just knew, oh, wow, yep, there's gotta be a big crowd right now. And so then hearing them, like, come closer and closer, literally people didn't even know what direction y'all were coming from. It was echoing that much. Like, we thought that y'all were coming from the opposite direction. I was looking at, like, our action plan, like, no, they should be coming this way. And so, like, then seeing the crowd come in and then just us watching and being like, okay, yeah, it's continuing to go, and they're loud. And they just got louder. And then y'all had, like, stopped at the side of the roundhouse for a little bit. And I think that's whenever people started to, like, really... Whenever Zan was saying, like, oh yeah, people forgot they lost their voices. Like, I heard the oomph in people's voice. I heard the passion. I heard how they were able to feel like they were building the collective power that they had spent a whole weekend trying and being really intentional about building for not only themselves, but for the whole community. And then seeing how not only those people were able to come themselves, but they were also able to bring other people, and then they were able to help get the message out. And seeing the culmination of what that mass mobilization ended up being, as well as just seeing all of the different, like, art spread throughout, the bandanas. Like, I had no clue how many people were truly gonna show up to this. And so one of the things that we were really wanting to do was make sure that the messaging was very clear. And that was so beautiful to actually see the march come through and me know exactly what it was about.
Yeah, no, what folks were mentioning around, like, the bootcamp participants that we were able to pull into different roles on the day of the mobilization, right? Everything from vehicle support to street medic work to, like Johnny was mentioning, in legal observer roles and de-escalation. It was also just making me think and reflect a little bit on, like, what We Got Us actually means to us and means in practice, right? And I think our direct actions and mobilizations, we try to reflect that in terms of our we put out, like, principles of engagement before any mobilization or action that we do. And one of the key pieces there is that we do not depend, right, on the police or the state or the very systems that we're fighting back against to protect us, and that we will protect each other. And I think, to me, that was, like, another way that this mobilization felt like an embodiment of some of what that phrase, I feel like, means to us. But I was curious if, like, there's other ways we've kind of seen that play out in practice in terms of, like, a lot of YUCCA's work to build power and create change outside of these institutions and these systems that have failed us, like how is what we are doing through We Got Us and like the continued work around it different from a framework that, you know, continues to rely on those systems?
I think that it's really cool because with We Got Us, we've been continuing to do a lot of different work around like Blackstone, right? And through that, we have seen so many of the participants coming, showing up. There was times that people were like not in opposition, and so they were literally getting like booed down the hall by the people that did like bird dogging trainings and different things like that. And it was just really cool to see how people wanted to put these things into action, and with that, how people also have the analysis of, honestly, this kind of just looks like theater right now, and recognizing that there's a need for a diversity of tactics. That, yes, we can definitely public comment, and that is not the only thing we can do. And it's having those conversations in the hall with people as they're literally still sitting there, like, I'm here to like hold these people accountable. That's what I'm here to do, is such a powerful thing to be able to build, because we see the fact that people have come to this awareness of what politics is looking like right now, and the systems that it's built by and that continue to perpetuate so much harm, and how they're fed up, they're done.
Yeah, no, that actually, I really like agree with this like idea around like We Got Us, and like what that means about like, you know, building community and understanding, and you know, really highlighting like really building class consciousness and solidarity and understanding of what like what that means and what community means and what it means, like what that and like what responsibilities that means like we have, and I also think it gives us so much like power and motivation and confidence, kind of like what we were talking about earlier, because once you understand that, you know, it is our duty and our job to like be in community with each other and hold the people who are supposed to serve us accountable, it creates like an opportunity, a moment for, you know, the movement to develop and move forward, but also for us, you know, to create power. And I really like want to highlight that, and like, you know, really kind of defeating the illusion of individuality and, you know, like what this system kind of tells us, which is that we're supposed to do things alone. We're supposed to just get through and struggle alone. And like struggle is needed so that we can prevail and eventually exploit people to ourselves. But really, no, we should all be developing and moving forward together. And I think creating spaces for people to, you know, not only understand that, learn that, but also like, you know, like take it for themselves, like figure out how they can own up to their responsibility of fighting back. And, you know, like really excited for like what that space continues to look like.
I think for me, it's definitely just the embodiment of everything that, you know, we've been building towards. You know, not only as YUCCA for the past, you know, 7 years, but, you know, those of us who have been organizing for quite some time now, you know, this journey, this political journey that, you know, we've been on, of education and development, and really learning, you know, about, you know, abolition and how we can best, you know, put some of these theories into practice, and to just see the space come together in a way where, yeah, where we are showing our community that we don't need to rely on these systems anymore, that we can build something better. And, you know, at that, during a time when, in response to all of the different attacks that our communities are facing, there is still, a large, I don't want to maybe say like majority anymore, because I actually think that that's shifted, but there's still such a large, group of people that are nervous and scared to change the way that things have been being done. And that maybe, I think something that we've been talking about quite a lot even recently is people maybe not even trusting that this model can be done at scale for, tens of thousands of people, and to actually be able to like show our community and also like communities across the nation, like, no, this actually is possible. We can keep people safe. We can not work with police. We can do all of these things. And, really lean on and build off of, the wisdom of our ancestors who, resisted in much harsher conditions with even less resources than we have today. I think that's, when I think of, We Got Us, the weekend and the mobilization, and really just, the title, like the name, like, I think that's really, what we were embodying throughout the entire, weekend and mobilization.
I think for me, kind of just echoing like what's already been said, but also just like the community part of it, and just around like Blackstone itself, I've seen just a lot of familiar faces from like We Got Us, just showing up and just seeing like them show up and the diversity of tactics and the confidence to show up in the ways that they feel they need to. I think it's so beautiful to see them like just building in the community.
No, yeah, I feel like Blackstone is a really good example. Like, we've been at these Public Regulation Commission hearings many times over the past couple weeks, and I think have seen so many folks that like maybe we had just been meeting and building connections with for the first time, a month ago, now showing up at every single one of these hearings, right? And not only showing up, but speaking out during public comment and helping to organize their communities. And it's been a really beautiful thing to witness in terms of the way that like capacity and solidarity is continuing to spread and grow. And I think with what Johnny was mentioning too, I feel like that's something we also saw in a couple other direct actions that we've worked on just in the past month too. We recently participated and helped to support the Albuquerque portion of the national shutdown that was called for by organizers in Minneapolis. And that work was done alongside a lot of the partners that we had maybe worked with more closely for the first time during We Got Us. And it was really, really cool and beautiful to see how those relationships have continued to grow and expand too. Yeah.
I've really appreciated to see this kind of coalescing of a more formal kind of leftist coalition in the city and in the state at large. I think that through We Got Us and through the past few weeks of working together on some of these like rapid response mobilizations and more like large scale things, we were all really just seeing, the reality of the value in like working together rather than continuing to work in these like separated silos, and to just see what is possible, when we come together, is just really powerful.
Y'all took the words right out of my mouth.
I was going to say too, so over the past month, like aside from, the fight going on against Blackstone's buyout, aside from these rapid response mobilizations that have been huge, right? Like massive crowds in the streets of like downtown, really, really cool to see. One of the spaces that we've also been building out, as we continue We Got Us as a long-term campaign, is also a weekly We Got Us network meeting space, which is somewhere that we have started to bring folks together virtually every Monday to really co-create the space together, right? And not only are we coming into Zoom together to share out like calls to action and urgent actions for folks to take from YUCCA, but also hearing from community that's on the call and from our partners and allies in this work, about the fights that they're facing on the ground right now and how folks can plug in to support their work. And I think that's been a really valuable space for us to continue to like build power together in, and one way that we're continuing to plug folks into this work as we figure out what the We Got Us campaign looks like long term. I think that's been a really powerful space too. Yeah.
No, definitely. I think that when, especially going back to all of this Blackstone stuff, like we were able to literally sit there and be like, okay, y'all, we're gonna practice this stuff. These are the exact dates, like, and like really being able to like build strategy with one another, and for people to discuss with one another what would be most comfortable for them, what they feel like they need in that space as well, what resources they need that we can help either with ourselves or that we know someone that can help with. And it's just a really beautiful space to be able to build, and then seeing people showing up in person too, and like on Zoom and all of these spaces, showing that people aren't only here to like sit in the meetings and talk, but actually put real action into their words. And that's what we need right now. And I know that that was a big piece that we were like talking about for a while, is like, okay, like so many people are activated right now. How do we get them to like tap in, right? And so it's actually a really beautiful space that people now feel supported to be able to tap into these different spaces, not only know that they're happening.
Yeah, it's so funny being on the back end of it now, because I feel like YUCCA was the place like for me to get activated, because I feel like I just joined like last year, and it was like, I think now being on the like the flip side of it, where like really trying to like realizing that people need, like there aren't really a lot of or enough spaces for people to get involved that are like actively like welcoming and are just open to like allowing you to actually get involved. And I think like just having that space and cultivating that space is not only like so important, but also I think like, yeah, I whiffed it. I don't know what else.
Yeah, I mean, I think the last thing I was going to touch on is I feel like, with that being said, in terms of like cultivating these welcoming spaces that like are meeting folks where they're at and really bringing folks in, I know that one question we get a lot from people is like, okay, how can we plug into the work right now? How can we get involved in the fight? And I would say one of the best ways to do that right now is by plugging into these weekly network meetings that we have, just launched last month. I think by creating this virtual space for folks, this is something we've tried to make super accessible to folks across the state. We have folks joining us from across the region too, who also like participated in the We Got Us Bootcamp and mass mobilization with us. And as we continue to, build out and grow that space, we would love to have y'all join us and help us co-create, what that work looks like moving forward. So that's every Monday at 5:30 p.m. Mountain Time. In the description, we'll be sure to put the link to RSVP to join us. But are there any other ways that y'all would say right now, are particularly important for folks that are looking to plug in, especially to like the We Got Us campaign or just into YUCCA's work more generally?
I think I would always recommend to look at our Instagram to see also what we're doing actively. And then through there, you can find like our link tree that has our website, and we post the different information for the network meetings as well and different things like that. So I think that I always tell people that's the best way that they can stay informed with what we're doing. And we also have an email list, so you could sign up to that, and then you'll get all of that information.
I would also say just kind of like plug some of our partners too, because, you know, there's so much work moving in so many different spaces across our state. You know, I can think of like Albuquerque Mutual Aid, also on Instagram, as well as Millions for Prisoners New Mexico. Millions for Prisoners is where people can find a lot more information around like getting trained in like cop watch, how to kind of, you know, participate in some of these community defense efforts that are, you know, starting to form in many communities across our country. And, you know, with Albuquerque Mutual Aid, they serve 300 families a week, packaging and delivering like food boxes and care packages. And they have like monthly onboarding sessions. And these pages are just really great resources to find like other trainings and other things that might also be happening.
All right. Thank you all so much for joining us today. This was the Yapping with Yucca podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Hold up, shut it down. Don't hold on to what is now. Don't fall through, cut it out. Rebel music, bump it now.